All right, good day, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. This is a special show because we're actually streaming live on Facebook to my personal feed for once. Usually it's actually going live on Live the Fuel. But Brian Strauser of the Strauser Project, a regular guest co-host, is joining me from his home casa in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, about 20 minutes from where I am in Allentown, Pennsylvania, because he and I have been busy on both sides of the front, and we just need to catch up. So you might actually hear his beautiful daughter in the background because she's a little spunky one. But hey, Brian, welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so
I'm excited to talk about this past adventure we just went on.
That's why I'm excited to go live because, oh God, it's been such a crazy year, dude. I mean, what is it? It's July 31st. So, I mean, we've gone from hospital bed goals to your knee injuries where our goals got aligned and then the goals shifted as far as mountain bike racing. For the past year, we're going to hit on today is the launch of the FAT documentary movie as well, a project that I've been working on for over a year with, Vinnie Tortorich and Serena Scott Thomas and the director Peter Pardini and crowdfunding and just, dude, I don't know, man. Is there anything else I can throw in there for us?
I don't know. This seems to be the only way we can make it happen anymore is from a distance because both of us got more things going on we know what to do with.
Yeah, it gets exhausting.
It's been a busy year.
Yeah, I mean, you've been listening to the show. The show's going to be almost 3 years soon. I'm going to air this as episode 290, by the way. So we literally are 10 shows away from hitting 300. So we can work that into the show too. I mean, I can't even remember your first episode number. Do you remember the first episode number?
I don't. No, I have
I got nothing.
No.
Ever since you and I connected and recorded a podcast in a Starbucks in Allentown on West Tillman Street across from the Wegmans, and which also then helped us connect and now create friendships with shout out to Dr. Megan Cannon, sports psychologist, who's also now a regular guest co-host on the show. So a lot of things happen in Starbucks.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm on the mobile office thing myself. I do a lot of work in there from time to time.
Yeah, you were telling me on our road trip out to the Wilderness 101. So let's go ahead and catch people up real quick. Why are we going to talk about the Wilderness 1? We'll give a refresh, ladies and gentlemen. This was a race that Brian set this goal before I did, and because he's just as psychotic as I am. And then I decided to accidentally collapse a lung in January, and I was on my hospital bed, and I was like, I need a goal to make a comeback. And I was like, I was going to go out and support Brian anyway. So I was like, hey, what the hell? Why don't I sign up for the race? And then fast forward a few months, you injure yourself exponentially more trying to do another mountain bike race down in Virginia. Am I wrong on all that?
Yeah, I went to do the Leesburg Baker's Dozen, which I've done at least, I think it was 3 times prior. I think that was my 4th time. In the past, I used to do it on a steel single speed, so I had 1 gear. I had no suspension. It was just me against the woods, and I rode for a full 13 hours straight back in the day, and went back just kind of as a training ride going on to this Wilderness 101 journey, which I've always looked at in the past as being kind of the last crazy event that I wanted to do. Now that, I hate to say it, but I'm getting a little older, but it's not so much the age thing that's getting to me as it is the lifestyle thing with 3 kids and a job, a pretty serious side business going on and everything. But once I got there, hoping that things were going to go a little bit differently, I just had more problems than I could deal with in the time that I needed to be in any type of shape to go do the Wilderness 101. And the big thing about the Wilderness 101 is I was going back. So I had already been there.
Yep.
Now you have a totally different understanding when we talk about this. To know the type of human being that's not only been there once, but he's looking to go back again. And I had only done about 42 miles, I think, when I got pulled at a stop. That was just kind of my goal to go back there and kind of finish what I started. But this just wasn't the year.
Well, I agree. The fact that you had actually attempted this race before years ago, and then were crazy enough to go back. Now that I've attempted it. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll go ahead and put it out there. I mean, I put it all over social media. Brian was like the ultimate a support coach, camp boss, camping, whatever you want to call it. But totally crash and burn, guys. Was it 2 Saturdays ago now, Brian? Yeah. It was very hot.
Hot wasn't even the word. The funny thing about that, and I'll let you give your experience, because one, you're the one who experienced it. But I had people when I was going there for the weekend to camp, to stay in a tent, that were telling me how busy I was going to stay in a tent. You know, it's going to be close to 100 degrees out there, and who would ever want to do that? And it humored me because of what I was going there to be a part of and who I was going to be around for something like that. It's funny when you talk to quote unquote average human beings that have no understanding as to some of these things that we get ourselves into, and they're concerned about my well-being staying in a tent, and yet 200 and some people were setting out for 101 miles in horrific heat and humidity and some of the worst climbing and rocky terrain known to man.
Yeah.
So how was the trail? Let's hear about it.
Yeah. How do I sum this up? Well, I had very expressive mannerisms in some of the videos you shot at the aid stations. The heat was no joke. I'm not afraid of heat. I mean, for God's sakes, I'm a former firefighter. But being stuck in a bike seat, for 10 hours, doing the amount of climbing that you hinted at, and I really didn't fathom. Totally sucked. I mean, I'm wearing a Kingdom Trails shirt from Vermont. I mean, I've mountain biked all over this country. That race course is freaking psychotic. So.
That's what makes it so awesome.
Yeah. And you I mean, how many years ago did you do your first attempt?
Oh man, I don't even remember exactly when it was.
But you did the first 40 miles.
Yeah, it was like 42 something.
Yeah, I only did. I did what? I did 66.66. And actually, here, because we have technology here, you get to experience screen sharing for the live webinar. Here's Strava. There's my data, and there's my red line, and then the red line does not complete itself back to the start. All right, so there you go, people. I'm not hiding anything. Scott did not finish a race. I ended up right here where a whole bunch of other people's photos are. And actually, here's a really, yeah, there you go. This is me in Brian's truck heading back to the campsite. That face pretty much says it all.
That looks better than what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd already wiped my face off from all the sweat, filth, and bugs. I did a little bit of a quick wipe down. That was about it. So yeah.
Hey, let's talk about that second stop. Or no, that wasn't. That was number four. Number 4, the last stop that you came to.
Yeah, that was aid station 4.
Those two guys that became like a new event for me in itself. I met these two guys that come out to this thing every year. I think that it was Evan and Paul were the two guys that were running that stop.
Yeah.
And they were grilling. First off, it's like a gazillion degrees. They're grilling out of the back of their truck, anywhere from eggs to bacon to sausage to pierogies to corn dogs. They got real excited when anybody took a corn dog. We had more fun sitting there watching people punish themselves. You could even imagine, but there was plenty of people that came in there too, and were right on the edge of heat stroke that literally were loopy, grabbing a seat. We were getting them water and stuff. It was fun being able to help out at least.
Well, when I got there, I thought the chairs were for people that were pulling themselves like I was about to do, because I mean, I was expecting to be already past that aid station, and this is now 5 o'clock. I think it was right around 5 p.m., right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we had started the race, people watching this, at 7 a.m., and I was averaging 10 miles an hour over the course for the first 4 hours, so I was doing great. I thought I was. I mean, meanwhile, the pros, like they're already like getting done at like hour 7 to 8. Wasn't that some of the top finishing times, like 7 or 8 hours?
Yeah.
Actually, I probably have that on file here. But yeah, I mean,
it's disturbing.
It's disturbing's not even the word, Brian.
First off, I was sitting there in the aid stations too when there's a couple of girls that look to be about 120 pounds soaking wet, come through smiling,
Yeah.
grabbed some water, grabbed something to eat, took off right back up the hill, and just kept going.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
nothing.
I know one of those girls because she was up from North Carolina and she and I were trucking on some of the same hills together. And then I'd pull away and then I'd see her again in another 5 miles and then I'd pull away again. And then finally, probably after aid station 3, or no, actually after I saw you at aid station 2, between aid station 2 and aid station 3, all of a sudden that girl comes past me again and I stopped just to get a water. She doesn't even hit the aid station 3. She just keeps going. And I was like, I think that was a semi-pro or a pro girl.
Yeah, there was some grassroots like pivot team people there and stuff.
She was on a pivot.
Yeah.
She was on a pivot. So I was like, okay, that was definitely a pro girl because it was like, yeah, I think she was just taking it easy for the first 20, 30 miles and then just took off. I never saw her again. So I was like, okay.
It was interesting just getting my pickup truck up to where that second rest stop was. Like the top of that hill was unimaginable for like, you can't explain this to people that haven't experienced and actually done it or been there. Like it was amazing the amount of climbing to get up to the top of that thing.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the cool thing about Strava is they actually do give you. Oh, let me screen share again. They give you like a terrain map, so like you can see the right here. You're going up, down. This is my course. This is just the first 66 miles. As you move along, there's a little taste of the hills, to say the least. And then, hold on, do I have another map here? Here you go. There's the whole course. Lots of climbs. And then here's aid station 4, right here in towards the middle of the screen. And all of this climbing was still left ahead of me. So, especially that nice vertical one right here.
that literally started directly after the bridge.
Yeah.
Like they said, you come out, make a right, and that there was people that went up that, didn't get it up to the top, turned around and came back down, then threw in the towel that way.
Oh yeah, that young girl. She was there when I got there, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I started to go up." And then I was like, she's like, my current pacing and the time, she's like, I just said, you know what? It's not even worth it. And everybody was agreeing that the heat was just god awful. I know for a fact that definitely mile 50, actually, hold on a second. Let me screen share that again. I remember these miles. It's mile 50 to 51, which is after aid station 3. So this big little hump right here in the middle, this is what did me in right there. Because I was trying to ride this between 1 and 2 p.m. or 1 and 3 p.m. And according to the app, I think they said it was like a high of 95. But the real feel was like 105 to 110 with the humidity index of like over 70% or something crazy like that. It was sweaty.
Yeah. And to explain to people that are watching this too, like this specific event, I was standing underneath a bridge in the shade, doing nothing more than drinking a cold beer, very cold. And still had sweat running down my back into my shorts just from standing there, filling up water bottles for people and helping people out as they came through. Like the heat, when we were driving there, that's the main thing coming out of my mouth was the heat's the factor of this entire race. Like everything came down to the temperature for this one.
Yeah. I mean, actually half of the racers all agreed that nobody was ready for that heat. There was that one gentleman that I met at aid station 4 where I ended up pulling myself. And he continued on the 5. And then we talked to him and his buddy later at the campsite. And he said, dude, I pulled myself at aid 5. And this was his 6th time doing this race. And this was the only race that he never finished. He's like, the heat index was awful. He's like, I pulled myself at aid station 5. And he's like, I've never not finished this race. And he was also doing the 101 miles that I was attempting. So
how about the dedication of the guy we met on Friday night?
Oh, the freaking guy from Nova Scotia?
Yeah, who we felt like we were bonding with one of our people.
Yeah.
Until this gentleman decided to let us know that he was missing his stepson's wedding to do this race.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we're sitting there talking like, oh yeah, yeah, part of the team. And then he walks away. Me and Scott were like, yeah, that guy might be a little bit of a douche.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm all about being hardcore, doing crazy things. Like I'm going skydiving again. Chris and I are going this Sunday. We do crazy things. But when the guy's like casually joking around that, oh yeah, I've had a long time girlfriend. And then he refers to his girlfriend's son as his stepson. That confused me actually for a second. I never heard of somebody calling their girlfriend's son their stepson. But you and I looked at each other. We're like, I don't know if that relationship's still going to be happening when
I'm
he
not
gets
even
back to
sure
Nova.
that he knew whether it was going to be happening or not.
I don't think he cared.
No.
It was a very unique character.
Yeah, it
So,
was, and that's where you're going to meet at those types of events.
I mean,
Normally
he
people
was a
don't do
legit
this stuff.
ultra athlete. I mean, that guy, didn't he say his next race up, he was heading out to like South Dakota for another 100-miler? And he
I don't know
said,
if you can still see me, but your screen just froze on me.
oh, yeah, the video will freeze from time to time depending on the internet. So, but I can hear you fine. I think it's your end. I'm actually getting a little delay. So,
Yeah,
but you sound fine. Don't worry. You can keep talking. This is the
you.
struggles of technology and live webinars. So, yeah. And actually, here's a great graphic. This is like the cover art for the race, a little cartoon. And that's about right. I mean, the guy's got an angry face in this photo, and you can see bicyclists going smaller and smaller into the distance, and they're all still down here too, because this switchbacking climb is so real, it's not even funny. Every damn road was a switchbacking climb, every road, or just went straight up,
and just no end to it.
No, it's like I remember looking down on my bike computer, and I'm like, dude, I've been climbing straight for over a mile. There was no breaks. It just kept going. So. But obviously, big picture, it was a little frustrating, I mean, obviously, I said that I'm not a guy who doesn't like to complete things. But you and I have talked about this, and it's also like I promised my now wife, Kristen. I said, "Hey, wait a minute." She's like, first of all, you're an idiot for signing up for this race." I said, "Thank you. I love you too." She probably sounds like your wife. Most sane people usually refer to us this way, but she's like, "Don't be a complete idiot and not, bow out if you are running the risk of heat stroke." So, and there was definitely a high risk that day of heat stroke and heat exhaustion.
Yeah, it was brutal.
I mean, you got first aid training. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, the first thing they gave you when they gave you a race packet is your shirt that you got and a paper on heat stroke.
Yeah.
Warning signs, what to do with it, etc. Like, you're getting into something when they hand you a heat stroke
awareness guide. I think they had to do that to cover their asses to make sure they weren't going to get sued.
Yeah.
Although, at the finish line, we did talk to those, which by the way, those steaming fan things that blew not steam, but obviously cool mist. Amazing. And wish I would have saw that when we first got back to the campsite, because we were hanging out for over half an hour before we finally even, mosey over to the medical tent. And they had all these amazing lounge chairs, and they were spraying mist, and it was so cool and refreshing. And I'm like, I could have used that an hour ago.
At that point in the game, too, had the sun gone down a little bit, I would have definitely tried to figure out a way to snag one of those and get it to my tent.
Yeah, that was here. You go, people who are actually for some reason still watching this crazy show. Is we literally were going to consider still camping that night. And Brian and I are back and forth. You already, fired up a sweet round one of dinner. You grilled up some scallops and some meat. It was awesome. And we were considering round two, and we were going to record this podcast live at the campsite. And then I think we both just started realizing, wait a minute. We're sitting here. The sun is setting. We're still sweating. It was still over 85 degrees at sunset. And then we're like, okay, we can be back home in about 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yeah,
and you weren't really arguing it.
Hard decision, I think.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything going on the next day anyway, so
no.
It was nice to get home and get that cold shower and lay down. Not that my tent setup's pretty damn comfy, but it was more the temps that were killing me.
Oh no! I mean, between you and I, we both understand proper gear. We could do a whole show just on gear prep. So you were definitely well equipped. I had my equip, you had your equip, and it was all working out well. It's just, why suffer through that level of humidity if you're already done with the race? And I mean, actually, funny thing is, half of that finish line campground was all clearing out.
Yeah.
The only people that were still there were the pin pants.
Normally, there would be a much bigger party. It would have been a much bigger reason to stick around and have a good time. And, there'd be bonfires and things. And it was definitely just it was, again, even back at camp, it was more of a survival thing. try to get yourself comfortable, get yourself rehydrated, because people were coming in beat up. Everybody's banged up from that event. Anybody that went out came back banged up, whether you completed it or not. And one guy on a fat bike, I remember the one guy we kept seeing on the red, I don't know, I think a Specialized fat bike or something. He came in, it was like 13 hours. It was like 12 hours and 50 some minutes. He comes rolling in on his fat bike. That's just insanity.
Well, that guy was crazy because he tried catching me on a couple hills, and then that guy eventually passed me too. And I was like, what the hell? That guy just rolled past me on a fat tire bike. We're talking, 5-inch wide. Like, he had the legit full-blown fat setup.
Oh yeah.
And I hope that he was doing the fat bike marathon distance, which was 75 miles. I don't think any of those fat bike guys were trying to do 101. But I could be, I could stand corrected.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure with him.
I mean, here's funny. Here you go. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. You think we're crazy about how many people failed to complete the race or did not even start? Here's the race results. So this guy's a pro in my division because here's the Open Men 101. This guy, Jeremiah Bishop, finished it in 7 hours and 8 minutes. I was like, what the hell is that? Meanwhile, my bib number was 43. So I was signed up way before this guy. He's bib 240. He's sponsored. So I was like, all right, man. You could tell he just kind of drops in on races when he's feeling bored and then crushes them. Right?
Look how tight the first three people are.
I know. Yeah. Within a minute of each other.
Yeah, that's insane.
And then this guy, just like, hey, man, he was bib number 4. So he's probably an annual regular. He doesn't roll in with any sponsorships, no teams. He's just like, yo, man, I just roll in and I conquer top 5, 7 hours, 23 minutes. Everybody else has got like some type of sponsorship here. He's probably local. Or maybe he's another guy from Nova Scotia that we didn't meet. I don't know. But then down here, keep going down. Here's all the DNFs. They just start cranking. DNF, 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 DNF. There I am. Live the fuel. There you go. Did not finish. Loser. No. And then here you go. Here's a single speed men. So some guy was doing this on a single speed. Nutball.
Yeah, I saw a couple actually. I think there was more than one.
Yeah, but this was a DNF at least. But I'm just like, okay. Here you go. Single speed women. And she finished in 11 hours and 48 minutes.
That's insane.
It's hardcore, people. One gear. This lady crushed it. There you go. There's another single speed man. Again, not sponsored. Oh, my God. He finished in 10 hours and 40 minutes. I was at aid station 4 at 10 hours. This is when you're up.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, you're up against some serious competition. Yeah, there's a lot more single speeds up here, all in the top 50. Jesus.
I remember back in the day racing the Mid-Atlantic Super Series. There was a guy that was on a pretty sweet old, looked like a fully rigid steel Bianchi, all old school colors, that light blue type greenish color that they always had.
Yeah.
Beautiful bike, but he would show up to the starting line all the time smoking a cigarette, and he would be smoking cigarettes all around. When you're setting up and getting ready to race and stuff, and you're looking at this guy thinking, what's this jackass doing? Like, who the hell comes out here and smokes and does this kind of stuff? And then when they said go, man, it was the last time you ever seen the guy. He was gone. He was a machine.
Yeah, that's just scary. That's like super powered, supernatural. I mean, that's why you and I geek out so much about biking. Yes, many of us are not normal. Mm-hmm. The word abnormal has been heard many times besides crazy or nutball or what's some of the favorite words you got?
Jackass.
Yep. Jackass. I get that one. I get that one all the time. Usually in a more loving way. Actually, no, Kristen does not say it in a loving way. So, but I'm okay with it. I think it's important to embrace your craziness. That's how I look at it. So let me fast forward. So obviously I did not finish the race. Brian and I already hinted we did not even camp another night. Made it back. Obviously I showed you some of the race results. There was definitely a lot of psychotic people. And there's still another whole section of pages that weren't even on this. This was mostly the 101. There was Clydesdale men divisions, Masters men division. There was also, again, I didn't even show you guys the pages of the results from the marathon distance, which was 75 miles. So I think last time I checked, there was over 30 or 40 people that DNF'd and didn't even bother starting. They were just like, I'm not even going to show up for this crazy race. And they spent, I mean, what did we pay to do this race?
I don't know. It was 100 and something. I thought it was close to 150, 140.
I think it was like 100, 140 or 160 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
But let me tell you, for a race that they cap it at 400, I think this year they had about 200. Very well run. I think they did a great job. You know, that radio van where you were standing, that guy got to be former military. That whole camoed out truck with like all that hardware.
That was those guys that were out there were a radio team of volunteers. So they actually had access to the guy back in the beginning. So they could radio throughout the whole course, which was pretty cool. Back in the day, I was part of the International Mountain Bike Association, IMBA.
Yeah, I remember.
Bike Patrol. And I ran a group of people, and our old school way back in the day was using two-way radios, the Cobra two-way radios.
Oh, yeah.
We would set them up, and I'd have my guys throughout a race course. Well, that's basically what they were doing on a more high-tech level. Those guys had, like, legitimate radios that they could go for miles and miles through all sorts of crazy terrain. I think the ones that I used were only good up to 2 miles or something like that. But they could radio. So if somebody DNF'd and they stopped at a stop, they would call it out. They'd call back to the main, like the starting place or whatever, and finish line, and let them know that 47 DNF'd at stop 4. So that way, which is cool because then everybody knows that person's safe. They know if they don't see him coming through, they know where they stopped. They know that somebody got an eye on them, know that they're all right, whatever. But
yeah, I was impressed. I like some of the, like Aid Station 2 where I first saw you at. I like they had like the families were there. There was kids checking racers in. It was super nice. I thought everything was well supported.
They got it pretty well dialed in. And it was pretty cool. Some of the people that I met throughout the day as I bumped around from stop to stop were either parents of young racers that were out there or husbands or wives type of stuff that were just involved with somebody that was out on the course, kind of like myself, that then, if they're going to be there, they were chipping in, because you got to figure 101 miles through that type of terrain. There are tons of places for people to get hurt and not found, and issues and things and safety to go on. So it was cool that they had a good following of people. And I think that's something to say for the sports itself, just because, it's as long as I've ever been involved in the mountain biking world and all the racing and being out in the middle of nowhere, there always tends to be such an awesome group of people out there trying to help everybody out and pump up the next generation coming through and whatever. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. That's again, it's just more reason why we love biking. And it's not just biking. I think a lot of sports have their own little clique, but the mountain biking world is completely unique that way. It's not the same as road cycling. There is a little bit of differences there. I live in both worlds, but I love the camaraderie and that grassroots support that you get in mountain biking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, listen, I think we hammered heavily on W101. Is there anything else you think we need to really throw back up there besides my crash and burn miss at mile 66.66?
Yeah, the only other question I had for you is when are you going to sign up for next year's?
Yeah. I know.
I've been there, done that, and I'm going to tell you, it's one of those things, and just being like I was, that when I came home from that the first time, I said there'll never be a day that I'll ever go back and put myself through that ever again. It's not worth it, this, that, whatever. And about 2 months later, I started saying, I got to figure out a way to get myself back there.
Well, I'll be honest. The race is doable. It is. I mean, here, and let's remind, actually, let me pause on this. There's still a lot of wins that came out of that day. That is the most miles now that I've actually done in a mountain biking race. My distances before that were 60 milers out in Colorado. So that's now officially the longest mountain biking race I've done. Thanks to the heat, I was in that bike seat for 10 hours. So that's the longest time that I've sat on a mountain biking seat. I don't know if that's really a win. Depends on how twisted you are. And then also that's probably the most I have sweated on a bike, because I think there's no other way to define it as swamp ass, but I mean, you're completely soaked through everything you got after maybe an hour or two of biking. I mean, yeah, it
And
was.
what that does to you again. So you saying that to most people that don't race or haven't put themselves through this type of thing doesn't mean anything to anybody. Okay, it was sweaty. But what people don't understand is when you're wet and your equipment, even though we wear the right stuff, when that stuff's rubbing back and forth on your legs or this, that, whatever, you might as well have, 100 grit sandpaper. Different things will chafe. You'll get rashed beyond belief or bleed in places, just like runners where their nipples are bleeding just from their shirt running up and down.
Yeah, marathon.
On their chest and stuff. When things get wet and they're rubbing on you all the time, and depending on, nothing's ever perfect. You try to find the right stuff, you train in the right stuff, you show up to race in the stuff that you trained in, and all it takes is one wrong decision or something gets a little bit out of whack, and you'll rub yourself raw in places you really wish you didn't.
Well, and basically what you're hinting at, which is, again, just adding to the lovely pleasure of this experience, is ultra sports. Like, this is a 100-mile event, so this is considered an ultra sport. That is my first official ultra race, because if I would have completed it, it would have been 101 miles. Not to take anything away from fitness. I truly believe that fitness is important. I obviously trained for this, but you and I talked about this. This is a mindset game. And what I remember, because being soaked to the bone didn't bother me actually at all. My nutrition was dialed in, my salt ratios, my electrolytes, like my whole game plan was rocking. I was not ready for the heat blast, in the 50-mile bracket that just did me in. I could have kept pedaling all day, but I had no power. I had no stability. So when I got into those rocky single tracks, it was getting dangerous. Like, I almost went over my handlebars probably 3 different times because my response time was being impacted. And I was like, okay, now we're getting sketchy. But really the most annoying things from that race, I told you, was one, tiny little gnats. Because when you're pedaling at only 2 to 3 miles per hour on a climb, you can't outspeed a gnat. And they're sitting there buzzing right in front of your freaking safety glasses. And it's so annoying. It was just beyond annoying. And then sweat coming down your nose and getting caught right on the edge of your nostril. I don't know. For me, those were the 2 most annoying things that were testing my mental fortitude that day.
And again, that goes with experience. I was talking to my buddy at work that I got into riding again, is really getting into it. And I wouldn't doubt if you don't see him at a number of races next year, and he's slowly, changing his habits and stuff. And he kind of struggles like I do on a number of different levels. But one of the things that I said to him is, like, we had a conversation in the truck, these endurance events are more of I hate to say it, but like an old guy's game. Like, it really is experience, and it's people that are smart, and can do the right homework and prepare properly. And one of the biggest things is, not rate, changing nothing on race day. That's one thing that we know. But then, and the other big thing that you just hit on, which we just had a conversation with me and this guy at work, was when you're out riding. And he said, I just had the other day, I was out and I was riding, and man, things just didn't feel right. I wasn't hitting things right. Like, I was all out of whack. I was losing my balance. And he goes, I had to just pull the plug. And I said, you know what? I said, that's called intelligence. I said, because it doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes you just have those days that you're out there. And when you ride enough, and you ride it for, as many years as we have and been through some of the different things that we've done, when things just aren't right. And when things aren't right, that's when, it takes a very small mistake at the worst possible time, and you can really get hurt. Mm-hmm. And for me, my mindset now and where my decisions come from is, I want to ride tomorrow. Back in the day, it was just about killing a jump or a gap or something pertaining to that task at hand on that nutty day. This could be a Tuesday evening with my buddies, but now it's more like I can't disable myself to where I can't go to work and I can't ride. I want to ride my bike. I want to go kayak, and when I hang out with my daughter, do all the crazy stuff that I do. And that's one of the things that just comes with experience and being a little bit older, to say, you know what, today's just not the day. Or you get to a place and like, yeah, I could keep going. The young idiot's going to keep going. He's probably going to end up half dead at the top of the hill. But, smart people know when to pull the plug and adjust the sails and go back and deal with it later. Well,
and I had you, I think you actually did go listen to that recent podcast I heard about quitting, right? So Dr. Stan was a great podcast. And I gave you a shout out in that show because actually you represented the intelligence that he educates people on. Like he's worked with famous people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and everybody else. And he referred to The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, and talks about how quitting is not a bad thing. It's just, we've just trained ourselves to think that it's a bad connotation. But he said, everybody has to quit something if they're going to move on to something bigger and better. And whether you want to call it stopping doing something and starting something new. And he's, back to your point, you have to look at your health too. And I gave you props because I remember you telling me, like, you know what, you talked to your wife and you thought about it. And you're like, you know what, I'm trying to be a super dad. I'm trying to build my side hustle business. You got a lot of irons in the fire, dude. Doesn't mean you can't stop going to the races. You just go serve a different role. And honestly, I was looking forward to seeing you at the aid station. So for me, that was like a psychological benefit, or else I would have truly been just rocking that weekend totally solo. So it was cool having you there, man. I want to give you a shout out for that because if I didn't do it before, I'm doing it now, man. Like it was a really nice benefit, having a camp boss and aid station buddy.
Yeah, the time that I went, I was out there completely solo. Like I was 100% by myself. And it is, it definitely is a different kind of a weird feeling.
Yeah. So speaking about
out there.
So speaking about helping people, supporting people, let's dive right into the FATDOC, right? All right, so that was real quick, people. If you're watching this or you're going to be listening to this once I aired this on the podcast platform around the world, a documentary crowdfunded on Indiegogo. I helped run the campaign. Last year, we won, or not won, basically hit the crushed goal out of the park, raised over $250,000 to help. Shout out to Vinnie Tortorich of Fitness Confidential, the founder and creator of the Fat documentary. But him, his wife, Serena Scott Thomas, Peter Pardini, the movie director, we helped them fund it through the power of the people. And they made that movie off of $250,000. And a lot more, actually, because I think Vinny had to throw a good chunk of change in himself. But now the movie has been picked up by Gravitas Ventures, and they've helped. They are the distribution partner. So now they're spending thousands of dollars to get it out around the world. And as of yesterday, July 30th, it officially launched on iTunes and Vimeo. And you can buy it on DVD and Blu-ray on Amazon already. And it's also available on Amazon Prime Video if people want to rent it and watch it. And Brian, you've already dug in, have you not?
Yep. Yeah, I caught it probably at 6 a.m. this morning. I think I started it.
There you go. And here, real quick.
I got the notification or whatever. I start work at 6, and that's when I'm crushing all my podcasts and stuff during work. But
wait, so you literally watched it first thing this morning?
Yeah, it was the first thing I did.
Oh, not. Was it this morning or yesterday? Huh, yesterday.
This morning, right?
Well, no, I mean, it aired yesterday. So.
Oh, then it was yesterday morning. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It all blends together. Yeah.
Dude, trust me. I'm in the middle of a campaign. I'm doing all the marketing. It's nutballs. I mean, here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is on iTunes, Fat a Documentary. Here it is on Vimeo, Fat a Documentary. Here it is on Amazon. You can get it in DVD or Blu-ray if you want to order the physicals, if people still do that. And then here it is on Amazon Prime. A nice little cameo shot from the famous Dr. Drew. He's actually in the movie as well. That's why he's got a cameo shot. So a lot of big names, a lot of healthy influencers, people like Nina Teicholz and Gary Taubes, who are medical news researchers. They get the truth out there. But what are your thoughts, man? Let's just dive in. Let me stop sharing here. What do you think, man? Big picture.
I would go so far as to say it was a little disturbing.
Let me guess. Was it the foot scene?
No, I think a little bit of everything.
Okay. So help us understand, man. What do you mean by disturbing?
Being a kid nut, so the one part that hit home, and I don't want to wreck it so people don't watch it, but the gentleman with his with the young boy that was having the seizures.
Oh yes, that is the famous Jim Abrams who made the movie. Remember the old movie Airplane?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's him.
He's the director, right?
Yeah, he made all those amazing, hilarious movies from like the 80s and 70s. So he's loaded, and he's the one who founded the Charlie Foundation in honor of everything he learned from his son and helping him go ketogenic to help with his seizure problem.
Yeah, that was pretty impactful, I guess you would say, story about that young man and what he was dealing with and what it took to change it, as simple and as easy as it was. And it's also, there's a lot of very informative stuff, just like where veganism came from, how it started and what it was about, there's a lot
Yeah,
of,
like 150 years ago, right?
there's a lot of different tidbits in there that people that think they know a lot of different stuff, you're going to get something out of it one way or the other.
Hmm.
Really shines a light on a lot of stuff. And it's pretty scary, when you think about, for people like me and you, we're kind of all in this together. And to watch something like that and feel like this, government and these people that are supposed to be watching after us and taking care of us are really, like everything else, it's more about the money and all the bullshit that, my number one thing, far above and beyond any type of sport that I'm into or crazy hobbies, my family and my kids. And to think, ever since I had this little girl as a baby and watching her grow up, I get more involved with worrying about the types of stuff that I'm putting in her mouth, because it's, I feel like I'm making a greater impact on a 4-year-old as opposed to a 40, almost 45-year-old. And myself, she's a lot of my, my drive and what I do and how I educate myself and a lot of this stuff. And it's very scary to see some of the things that are going into these foods that are just sitting on the shelf at Weiss, Giant, Wegmans, wherever the hell you go, that's readily available, and you're giving it to your family. And how many things you think you're doing the right thing, getting the healthy stuff, and you're really feeding your kid poison, and then the stuff that it's doing for them long term. And so many people look at this stuff, and I'm so sick of hearing the same shit from so many people that say, oh, this is, this is what kids been eating for years. This is just what, it's the way it is. This is just how it is. Like, it's time for people to wake up a little bit for some of that stuff and take responsibility for, one, being a parent. If you got a kid, it's one thing to what you do to yourself when you're an adult. That's, kind of your own thing. When you have a child, that's a totally different responsibility from a guy like me that takes that stuff, very seriously. And that's really where my drive comes, to educate myself and all this stuff. It's gone above and beyond trying to help myself, which I'm always working on. But, it's how I can better influence my little 4-year-old, because she's got the rest of her life ahead of her. And if I can get things right or better, from the get-go, she's going to be that much better off down the road. And hopefully I don't have any of these horror stories. And it's only going to get worse, from what I've been seeing, more than get better, unless a lot of people get on board with stuff like this documentary and see what's really going on.
That's one of the reasons why I was excited when they asked me to help join the project and fuel the fire, so to speak, which was, I'm really proud of the project. I'm really proud of what they pulled off. I'm just happy to have been a small component of it, because they even though you brought like veganism and everything else, they don't actually bash anything in this. Even though people who know Vinnie, they know he's the guy who founded the NSNG trademark, no sugar, no grains lifestyle. But he never once promoted himself as, NSNG. He never mentions it in there. He wanted to make sure this documentary got out there, and simply did what you just said. They're bringing up all the truth from history, going back 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, even 150 years ago, because people need to know that, hey, you don't actually know everything. And there's a lot of knowledge that's being missed and skipped over. And I love what you just pointed out. You said, listen, take some accountability for this. I've said it on the podcast before, where we do need to become a kind of our own inner physicians, so to speak. Do some self-study. Don't blindly just trust that everything is being told to you is accurate. You need to dig into some of this stuff and make the time to learn. And some of us are just further along in the education process, but it doesn't mean you can't start today. So I love the fact you pointed that out.
Yeah. And one of the things from, just a little side note too, from Live the Fuel and from Vinnie's podcast and stuff like that, like I'm slowly taking, different things and trying different stuff out. Like you said, becoming your inner physician, trying things out. And one of the things was recently I talked to you about, you gave me some samples when we were on the Wilderness 101 that I dove into is it pili nuts? Is that how they say it? Pili or pili?
Yeah, pili, as in like the Philippines. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always say pili, but I thought I heard him saying pili. But anyways, pili nuts, those things. I got their sampler, and although I didn't like the spicy stuff that came, because I'm not a spicy guy.
Oh, see, I love those. Yeah.
That stuff is like crack. Like
I warned you.
It's not even a nut. I don't even know what that stuff is, but it is like the butteriest, tastiest thing I've ever had. But and I'm trying to. I got the F bombs coming, the fat bombs, and
Yeah, and actually here for the people he's talking about, like this, I have them on my website on livethefuel.com on the affiliates. But yeah, that's the F bombs. I used these actually in the race 2 weeks ago because I was completely fueled by fat. And then there's the pilly nuts, and these are like crack. But I mean, if you think an almond is healthy and you think a macadamia nut is healthy, try eating pilly nuts that are grown in ancient volcanic soil in the Philippines. Healthiest freaking nut on the planet, rich in healthy fats, rich in healthy magnesium. And yes, use our discount code FUEL and you'll save 10%, which Brian did. So,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm going up to the Dewdrop Campground in the Allegheny State Forest, Jake's Rocks Trails.
Beautiful.
In probably 2 weeks or something. And we also have a trip to the beach. So I stocked up on a whole bunch of that stuff just to have, some better choices for snacks.
Oh, and by the way, so did you end up eating like a whole bag? Because I've done that many times. It's just so good.
Yeah, well, the first bag I just wailed on. I didn't even look at the thing. I thought it was like a single serve until I looked around. It was like almost 400 calories or something for one of those bags.
Well, and you know me, dude.
It was worth it.
I've talked about this before. I'll sit down and I'll crush 2 steaks. I've never counted a calorie in my life. So this goes back to what we're talking about right now is what is the quality of what you're putting in your mouth, right? So yeah, I can eat a whole little bag of the pilly nuts. I'm not even fazed by it. So, so yeah, for people out there, once you get a clue, you actually don't really need to count a calorie. It's what are the calories, So, and I don't think they really drilled the heck out of that in the movie, but I think that's just something in general people need to learn more about.
Yeah, it was good. That stuff was good.
So, big picture, what'd you take away? If you were going to explain FATDOC to people or get people interested, like how would you sum it up?
Wow.
Like education, eye-opening. Like what are you thinking?
I would say all the above. The one thing I think the best thing that they did about it is not coming across like you said and bashing or putting anyone down. Like it literally is. It is just a series of facts and things from the past, and the pictures are good. The parts that they bring up, and I don't know, just the way they bring everything across. It's extremely informative and in a way to be helpful and not arrogant and F you to somebody else. Because the moment you watch something in whatever world it is that you're watching it on, and they're like, do this because these guys suck and this sucks and you people are a bunch of morons, and
it's true.
Then you're listening to an arrogant asshole, and you're not going to take his word as well as you will somebody that's extremely calm and factual and laying things out there the way that it is, and in a way to help people, and not, it's not every 10 seconds in the FATDOC they don't stop and say, so if you like to listen to my podcast, you can go to www. It is just informative information on stuff that people need to know.
Yeah, that's my biggest takeaway too, is when I saw them making the movie and they were telling me how they were going to do it, I was so excited because it's not just showing, and there is some dramatic scenes in there. I will warn people that, there's actually been a few people that say, hey man, you should have put a warning up about the foot scene. But I will warn people that, hey, there is a scene regarding a foot. I'll give you a hint. It's tied to diabetes. So if you have a clue, there could be some dramatic, observations. It might be a little scary, but my point is that it's truth. But the beauty of it is that every single thing they bring up in there, they bring up the statistics. They bring up the actual data. They bring up the actual science. They're not fluffing it and throwing fake numbers out there or fake data. Everything has been validated. Everything has been proven. And that's what they wanted to make sure got into this documentary, because there's a lot of documentaries out there, I won't bring them up, that have been paid for by other agendas, and they're not actually backed up by any valid science whatsoever. And
the problem these days too is if you got a good marketing guy like yourself, or somebody that understands the psychology of human beings and how we think and how we react to stuff and whatever, if you have a good marketing scheme, you can sell anything. We can make crack be the next big thing. If it's marketed right and you talk about it, get the right person to speak upon it, throw out a couple of shirts, whatever. This the thing about this stuff is, it's information that's real, that people need to get out of the dark in what they believed for so many years, just because that's what they've heard, and understand that what you've been hearing isn't what's right. And there's too many agendas behind what's going on. And I hate politics. I hate any type of, I don't like to follow and get behind a whole lot of stuff. But the one thing about this is, the diseases, and you didn't hear about kids with the major amounts of autism and all these genetic disorders and stuff that's going on. I always go back to kids because, again, that's what fuels my fire. So, with the kids, all of the statistics between how many kids are coming out with some type of an issue, and the diabetes and stuff is just, it's running rampant now. Cancer is, back in the day,
kids are being born already diabetic.
Oh yeah, with and so many other things, and so much of it goes back to diet, that it's, that's what fuels us. It's what makes us what we are. And if you're not putting the right thing in there, or if you're putting chemicals and all the sprays and the stuff that goes into, like, I've now spent hours and hours, because of the job that I have. I can wear a pair of headphones and I can listen to podcasts until I'm blue in the face, and it's amazing how much stuff that I've educated myself on. Almost disturbing to me, like, and it's trying to deal with it all. That's become more of a job, and slowly, making transitions into different things, and trying to, involve my kids and my family and whatever to doing healthier, smarter things.
Well, and that's the point too, is like, not everybody's going to have a job or a career that allows them that much time freedom to be able to pop a set of headphones in. But that doesn't give you a complete excuse. Like I said, some of us will be able to consume content faster than others. I do a lot of travel, so that's why I've been a voracious podcast listener before I even launched my own show. But that's also why there is, YouTube is now nicknamed YouTube University, because you can pretty much find anything on there. So there basically, nowadays, there is no excuse to not start learning and start teaching yourself and finding the right information. So I'm glad you brought that up, because whether it's podcasts, audiobooks, again, YouTube, I don't care how you choose to use as far as a learning platform, whether it be audio, video, or both. Just start taking action. Stop living blindly in your world, because most people who do that then just start making excuses, and they don't take any accountability for where they end up. And I know that drives you nuts just as much as it drives me nuts, because I don't like the blame game. We all need to step up and own our shit. Stop passing the buck. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I know, I would say, since the day I met you and got into the whole, I never even knew what the hell a podcast was, and all this stuff. And I'm so into the stuff now that it's almost tough to try to deal with all that information. There's so much stuff that's out there that you're hearing from people, from legitimate sources, from people. The thing that I like most about it is it's from people that have nothing to gain. So, I don't trust a Nike commercial because they're making money off of the shoes that they're selling. They may not be the best shoes in the world, but they're going to cost, $199, and they're going to make a shit ton of money off them. But when you're listening to this podcast stuff and these different things, and the people that are coming on, a lot of times too, it's people that have had things that have touched them in the past. They've been through stuff. They've lived it. They dealt with a family member that struggled with something. And then this, and this helped them. And through that, they educated themselves and found out this whole other world of things. My biggest thing for people is to keep an open mind to that kind of stuff. Don't be so old school. I'm as old school as they get. Like, I'm a very simple dude in the realm of things, but you got to be open-minded to, what isn't necessarily what's really going on.
Yeah.
And it's scary. And people like me that love to do, like you also, that love to do things for people, and we want the best out of everything. It's hard to wrap your brain around and think some guy's trying to screw you over, selling me a Pop-Tart. Can't be that bad. Well, it is that bad. Yeah. Pop-Tarts suck.
I love it. Well said, Brian. I couldn't have said it any better, my friend. I couldn't have said it any better. You know what? The sad part is, I used to eat those things. All right.
Who didn't? Because we didn't know any better.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't know any better.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on a farm eating eggs and bacon and drinking raw goat's milk. And then one day I'm eating TV dinners and Pop-Tarts. I'm like, yeah.
Their marketing was better than our intelligence was.
Yeah.
That's changed now.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents switched me from eggs and bacon to eating cereal because it was easier. It was faster. They didn't know they were doing anything wrong. And there's parents to this day still doing that because marketing is telling them, oh, they're reinforced with vitamins and minerals and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's still manufactured crap. And those vitamins are sprayed on and your body can't even absorb them. But what do you know? Because you haven't actually learned this yet. I have. You have. We're all learning. That's the most important thing here is we're committed to learning. And I think that's the part of life in general is that we all should be at some point in the stage of the game committing to be that lifelong learner. And I know that's definitely been a big chapter of your growth.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, listen, man, we're coming to the end of our slot because I'm actually hosting another FATDOC watching party in a couple of minutes. So how do you want to close the show out, man?
I think we kind of did.
Well, besides Pop-Tarts.
Besides Pop-Tarts sucking as bad as they do, biggest thing I would say to anybody is keep an open mind. This has been an awesome ride ever since I met you a number of years ago. I think it's been 3 to 4 years ago now.
It's at least 3. Yeah.
Chainsaw work. I went out and suffered in the woods with you, and there was a little bit of I don't even know what to say, like a little bit of comfort while I was standing underneath that bridge, watching you pull up in the middle of W101, and knowing that I just put you through that pain and suffering, and I had a little bit of a part of that. It was pretty exciting. But the one thing that all of this stuff has kind of done for me is open my eyes to just being more open to different things. I never was into this type of stuff. I've read more books in the past 4 years than I probably read in the past 40.
Yeah. And I've dropped a few on your windshield along the way.
Yeah, it's just been a blast. So, anybody watching in this type of stuff, and check out this FATDOC. It was a great story. I told my wife as soon as I watched it, sent something to her. I said, I watched something. I said, I don't care if I got to put my family in the car and we'll go to Staten Island to something, with one of her family members or whatever. I'll put it on in my truck so nobody can get away from it, and they're just going to listen to it. Because it's amazing information that's out there. Somebody can definitely get something from it. It's not stuff that I would have been following in the past, and it's definitely things that have been, I've been opened up to more recently, and it's just been a great ride, learning all this stuff. Keep an open mind.
There you go, people. Keep an open mind. Well, listen, that's how we're going to close the show out. Keep an open mind, share the FATDOC. If you're psychotic enough, you might want to join us because I'm probably going to end up doing the W101 again next year.
Next year, let's start with the Leesburg. We're talking about the Leesburg Baker's Dozen again.
Let's do Leesburg.
13-hour. That's fun.
Yeah. Let's start with some fun before the massive torture.
We won't get into that right now.
Yes, and actually stay tuned. Brian is always coming on more regularly now, and we do need to catch up more on the new Fuel Foundation's launch. I still need to make time to do some logo package on that, but obviously the 501c3 is now launched. We now have a charity. Brian is one of the launching board members of Guidance, besides my wife. So thank you for taking that on. And like every new project, it just takes a little while to get it going, but we've already made some impacts before even turning the key on that. So shout out to some Johns that we know. You can reference those in the old podcasts. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for hanging with us. Remember, you too can live the fuel. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thanks, Scott.